Hi friends, this is IGNOU ES 333 in B.ED course, Educational Evaluation. What's the purpose to make this video is, at first I will read the question and I will pronounce the question answer with the words in one video, and then the same I will form and explain in another video. I will explain from English to Hindi so that it can be advantageous for even for the Hindi medium. तो मेरा कहने का मतलब ये था कि पहले तो हम इसको रीड करेंगे, जैसे कि 4 या 5 क्वेश्चन इसमें अच्छे से रीड करेंगे, रीडिंग करके हम अलग कर देंगे और इस वीडियो में केवल रीडिंग ही रहेगा। और इसके बाद जो हम अगला वीडियो बनाएंगे, इसी का दूसरा पार्ट जो बनाएंगे हम, तो उस पार्ट में आपको जो है हम उसको एक्सप्लेन भी करेंगे। एक्सप्लेन का मीनिंग है हम एक तरफ से हिंदी पढ़ते चले जाएंगे, इंग्लिश पढ़ते चले जाएंगे, और दूसरी तरफ से जो है वो हम हिंदी में उसको जितना हम जानते हैं उतना हम जो है उसको अनुवाद करते चले जाएंगे, बताते चले जाएंगे, समझाते चले जाएंगे। और जो भी मदद मिल सके मेरे से, मैं कोशिश करता हूं कि आप लोगों तक पहुंचाने का, आप लोग इसका जो है फायदा उठा सकें। और ये है स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड की पब्लिकेशन, ये शायद आप लोगों के पास भी होगी, जो इग्नू की एक नोटबुक के रूप में है। हालांकि इसका जो मटेरियल होते हैं, इसमें जो क्वेश्चंस होंगे और आंसर मोस्टली जो है ओरिजिनल जो बुक्स होते हैं इग्नू के, उन्हीं में से कट या पेस्ट किया हुआ होता है। तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं। तो सबसे पहले हम इसमें ब्लॉक फर्स्ट से जो है शुरू करते हैं, जिसमें है चैप्टर 1 नीड कॉन्सेप्ट एंड कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ इवैल्यूएशन। तो जैसे मैंने कहा कि पहले हम इसको रीड करेंगे, इसमें 2, 3, 4 क्वेश्चन जो भी हो सके हम वहीं रोकेंगे जहां पे लगेगा कि मुझे वीडियो बहुत बड़ा हो रहा है। और उसके बाद हम रीड इसलिए करेंगे ताकि आप इसको ऑडियो फॉर्म में भी सुन सकें, जैसे कि कान में लीड लगा करके, या अपने घर में जो है अगर आपके पास ब्लूटूथ कनेक्टिविटी है या साउंड है तो उसमें भी सुन सकें, क्योंकि सुनने से ज़्यादा याद होता है। तो सबसे पहले हम इसको रीड ही करेंगे। ओके, देन आई एम गोइंग टू जस्ट स्टार्ट इट। At first, I am starting with the Winston Churchill quote. It is given that true genius resides in the capacity for evaluation of uncertain, hazardous, and conflicting information. Now, we come towards the first question. This question is, write note on difference between evaluation and measurement. It was asked in December 2011. Or, explain the difference between evaluation, assessment, and measurement. It was asked in June 2007. Or, define the terms measurement, assessment, and evaluation and establish relationship between them. Illustrate your answer with suitable examples. It was asked in June 2009. You can also read with me so that the poor reader can also read with me. Mostly the students who have jumped from English medium to Hindi medium and who wants to polish it, okay, and it can be fruitful. Now it is. Evaluation is an identification activity to see if a planned program has been achieved or not, valuable or not. It's also to see the level of implementation efficiency. Evaluation is relating to the decision value. Educational evaluation is the process of delineating, obtaining, and providing useful information for judging decision alternatives. From Stoffel beam views, we can see that the essence of evaluation is to provide information for decision making purposes. In education, we can evaluate the new curriculum and education policy, specific learning resources, teacher or work ethic. Measurement is the process of obtaining the business number or numerical description of the degree to which a learner has reached a certain characteristic. Assessment is implementing a variety of ways and using various assessment tools to obtain information about the extent to which learners' learning outcome or achievement of learners' competence range ability. Assessment will be answering questions about how well the results or achievement of a students. The assessment value can be qualitative, narrative statement in words, and qualitative value in number. Measurement is related to the process of finding or determination of the quantitative value. The test is the assessment to be designed and implemented to students at a particular time and place and under conditions that meet certain requirements and are clear. In particular, in the context of learning in the classroom, the assessment is to determine the progress and outcomes of students, diagnosing learning difficulties, provide feedback, improvement of teaching and learning process, and determining the increase in class. The assessment can be obtained through accurate information about the organization, of teaching and learning success of students, teachers, and the learning process itself. Based on that information, teacher can make decisions about learners' difficulties and the effort, necessary guidance, and presence of curriculum itself. Objective assessment. Assessment has a very important purpose in learning, such as for grading, selection, knowing the level of mastery of competencies, counseling, diagnosis, and prediction. For grading, the assessment is intended to define or distinguish the position of a student as work compared with other learners. This assessment will indicate the position of learners in the sequence compared with other children. Therefore, the function of assessment for grading is likely to compare the child with the other children so that more refer to the assessment of the reference norm-referenced assessment. As a means of selection, assessment is intended to separate between learners who fall into certain categories and who do not. Learners are allowed to enter a particular school or those who are not allowed. In this case, the function of assessment is to determine the person can enter or not in a particular school. To illustrate the extent to which a student has mastered the competencies, and in fourth it is given as guidance, the assessment aims to evaluate the learning outcomes of learners in order to help learners understand themselves, make decisions about next steps, both for the selection of courses, personality development, as well as for the measures. As a means of diagnosis, the assessment aims to show learning difficulties experienced by learners and the possibility of achievement that can be developed. This will help teachers determine whether a person needs remedies or enrichment. As a predictive tool, the assessment aims to obtain information that can predict the performance of students in the next education level or in a suitable job. Examples of this assessment are the Scholastic Aptitudes Test or the tests of academic potential. From the sixth assessment objective, the goal is to see the level mastery of competencies, mentoring, and सॉरी थोड़ा सा ये रखने में इसको दिक्कत हो रही है. Also major role in the assessment diagnostics. In accordance with these goals, the assessment requires teachers to directly or indirectly be capable of conducting an assessment in the overall learning process to assess the extent students have mastered a variety of competencies. Of course, various types of assessment needs to be given in accordance with the competencies to be assessed, such as performance, assignment, project, the work product, a collection of a student work portfolio, and a written assessment, paper and pencil test. Thus, the purpose of assessment is to provide comprehensive input information about learners' learning outcome, whether viewed as the learning activities take place and when viewed from the end result, using various ways in accordance with the competency assessed that is expected to reach learners. Next is the measurement vs evaluation. Measurement and evaluation are concepts that hold great significance in all human activities. While driving a car, we cannot measure the distance between the two, yet are able to cruise in between the vehicles. As we evaluate that we are safe and make an assessment on the basis of what our eyes sees. Yes, measurement is more accurate as it yields a standard result, and we can compare the results of two students in an exam on the basis of marks secured by them in individual subjects. Measurements make a strong basis for the evaluation, and we dare to compare two objects when we know their measurements. However, evaluation becomes necessary even without measurement when there are none to take, as in the case of evaluating two novels or paintings. Measurement and evaluation are very important tools in teaching profession, which makes it prudent to have a better understanding of the two methods. Measurement is easy to implement as it is a scientific process of knowing the attributes of an object. We have tools for measurement such as a speedometer to measure the velocity of a moving car, weighing machine to measure the weight of an individual, and the thermometer to measure the temperature of an object. Measurement tells us how hot, fast, tall, heavy, dense, or long scores of other attributes an object is. Of course, we can make measurements of physical attributes, but what do we do when we have to measure attributes that have not been standardized to be easily measured and with tools? This is where evaluation comes into picture. The word value inside evaluation is enough to convey an impression that we are passing our judgment about a thing or an individual. We evaluate a plan, a process, success or failure of a method, policies of a government, fairness or lack of it in a judicial system, and so on. We do not have the advantage of tools to make measurements in such cases, but still evaluation is done. Of course, evaluation becomes much easier when measured results are available. But evaluation has its own importance and used widely in many situations. Measurement is objective while evaluation may be subjective. Measurement remains constant, whoever measures, but evaluation depends on the mind frame of doer. For example, taking out 1 kilogram of price is measurement, but determining as good quality or otherwise is evaluation. Measurement is the process of knowing about physical qualities of objects and individuals such as length, weight, height, volume, density, and so on. On the other hand, there are circumstances where measurement is not possible. There is where evaluation is done on the basis of either comparison or assessment. Evaluation helps in passing judgment about policies, performances, processes, and so on. Measurement refers to the process by which the attributes or dimension of some physical object are determined. One exception seems to be in the use of the word measure in determining the IQ of a person. The phrase, "this test measures IQ," is commonly used. Measuring such things as attitudes or preferences also applies. However, when we measure, we generally use some standard instrument to determine how big, tall, heavy, voluminous, hot, cold, fast, or straight something actually is. Standard instruments refer to physical devices such as rulers, scales, thermometers, pressure gauges, etc. We measure to obtain information about what is. Such information may or may not be useful depending on the accuracy of the instruments we use and our skill at using them. There are few such instruments in the social sciences that approach the validity and reliability of, say, a 12 ruler. We measure how big a classroom is in terms of square feet. We measure the temperature of the room by using a thermometer, and we use an ohm meter to determine the voltage, ampere, range, and resistance in a circuit. In all of these examples, we are not assessing anything. We are simply collecting information relative to some established rule or standard. Assessment is therefore quite different from measurement and has uses that suggest very different purposes. For example, a person who has in his or her possession a working ohm meter but does not know how to use it properly could apply it to an electrical circuit, but the obtained results would mean little or nothing in terms of useful information. Assessment is a process by which information is obtained relative to some non-objective or goal. Assessment is a broad term that includes testing. A test is a special form of assessment. Tests are assessments made under contrived circumstances, especially so that they may be administered. In other words, all tests are assessments, but not all assessments are tests. We test at the end of a lesson or unit. We assess progress at the end of a school year through testing, and we assess verbal and quantitative skills through such instruments as the SAT and GRE. Whether implicit or explicit, assessment is most usefully connected to some goal or objective for which the assessment is designed. A test or assessment yields information relative to an objective or goal. In that sense, we test or assess to determine whether or not an objective or goal has been obtained. Assessment of a skill attainment is rather straightforward. Either the skill exists at some acceptable level or it doesn't. Skills are readily demonstrable. Assessment of understanding is much more difficult and complex. Skills can be practiced, understandings cannot. We can assess a person's knowledge in a variety of ways, but there is always an inference that we make about what a person does in relation to what it signifies about what he knows. To assess means to stipulate the condition of which the behaviors specified in an objective may be ascertained. Such stipulations are usually in the form of written descriptions. Evaluation is perhaps the most complex and least understood of the terms. Inherent in the idea of evaluation is value. When we evaluate, what we are doing is engaging in some process that is designed to provide information that will help us make a judgment about a given situation. Generally, any evaluation process requires information about the situation in question. A situation is an umbrella term that takes into account such ideas as objectives, goals, standards, procedures, and so on. When we Evaluate. We are saying that the process will yield information regarding the worthiness, appropriateness, goodness, validity, legality, etc. of something for which a reliable measurement or assessment has been made. For example, we often ask my students if they wanted to determine the temperature of the classroom, they would need to get a thermometer and take several readings at different spots and perhaps average the readings. That is simple measuring. The average temperature tells us nothing about whether or not it is appropriate for learning. In order to do that, students would have to be polled in some reliable and valid way. That polling process is what evaluation is all about. A classroom average temperature of 35 degrees Celsius is simply information. It is the context of the temperature for a particular purpose that provides the criteria for evaluation. A temperature of 35 degrees Celsius may not be very good for some students, while for others it is ideal for learning. We evaluate every day. Teachers in particular are constantly evaluating students, and such evaluations are usually done in the context of comparisons between what was intended, learning progress behavior, and what was obtained. Indication of quality must be given in the defined criteria of each class category. Evaluation differs from general classification only in this respect. To sum up, we measure distance, we assess learning, and we evaluate results in terms of some set of criteria. These three terms are certainly share some common attributes, but it is useful to think of them as separate but connected ideas and process. Now this is next question. Discuss the important aspects that ensure fairness and accuracy of evaluation. This question was asked in December 2011. Or explain the characteristics of good evaluation with suitable illustration. It was asked in December 2007. Answer. Assessment makes teaching into teaching. Mere presentation without assessment of what the learners have made of what we have offered them is not teaching. So assessment is not a discrete process but integral to every stage of teaching, from minute to minute as much as module to module. From minute to minute it would be, not because it is not showing the time here, from minute to minute as much as module to module. And informal assessment or evaluation is going on all the time. Every time a student answers questions, yes, so we go back here again. It can represent time, but after the explanation, let's see what happens here. We again go for the next sentence. An informal assessment evaluation is going on all the time. Every time a student answers question or asks one, or starts looking out of the window or cracks a joke. He is providing us with feedback about whether learning is taking place. It's more an evaluation of the teaching session than about his learning, but the two are inextricable. Assessment teaches back into the rest of the teaching. In particular, poorly designed formal assessment designs can severely hinder student learning and distort the process and subject matter. All assessment is ultimately subjective. There is no such thing as an objective test. Even when there is a high degree of standardization, the judgment of what things are tested and what constitutes a criteria of satisfactory performance is in the hands of the assessor. However, we can still make every effort to ensure that assessment is valid, reliable, and fair. Now, validity. A valid form of assessment is one which measures what it is supposed to measure. It does not assess memory when it is supposed to be assessing problem solving and vice versa. It does not grade someone on the quality of their writing when writing skills are not relevant to the topic being assessed, but it does when they are. It does seek to cover as much of the assembled material as practicable, not relying on inference from a small and arbitrary sample, and here it spills over into reliability. Unfortunately, no assessment is completely valid. Reliability. It is also known as here replicability. It is actually misprint here, it would be R, not E. Replicability. A reliable assessment will produce the same result on retest and will produce similar results with a similar cohort of students. So it is the constant in its method of criteria. Next is the fairness. This is really, you can see here, this is really an aspect of validity, but important enough to note in its own right. Fairness ensures that it is the word, everyone has an equal chance of getting a good assessment. This may include where appropriate anonymity of submitted material, so that extraneous considerations such as the quality of contributions in seminars, if they are not part of the assessment scheme, cannot influence the final result. Next is the practicability. Evaluation procedure should be realistic, practical and efficient in terms of their cost, time taken and ease of application. It may be an ideal procedure of evaluation but may not be put into practice. This is not to be encouraged. For example, in practical examination of students, it may be convenient to assign different experiments instead of assigning one experiment to all students. By doing this, the problem of having various set of apparatus of conducting one experiment can be avoided, but this may not be practicable. Usefulness. Evaluation should also be useful for students. Feedback from evaluation must be made available to the students and help them to prove their current strengths and weaknesses. By knowing their strengths and weaknesses, students can think of further improvement. Evaluation should suggest all the needful requirements for their improvement. The requirements may be in terms of improvement in the content to be taught, teaching methods, and style of learning. Hence, evaluation is very useful in diagnosing weakness and remedying them. Evaluation must be fair to all students. This can be possible by accurate reflecting of range of expected behaviors as desired by the course objectives. To keep fairness in evaluation, it is also desired that students should know exactly what they are to be evaluated. This means that students should be provided information about evaluation, such as nature of the materials on which they are to be examined, that is, context and objectives, the form and structure of the examination, length of the examination, and the value in terms of marks of each component of the course. Okay, then I am going to explain it in Hindi, English to Hindi in the next video, and then again we'll cover 2 or 3 questions in the next part, and then we'll do the same process. Okay, so if you like this, you can like and subscribe the channel. You can also share this video to those who have just changed the medium from Hindi to English and who can take advantage of it. Thank you so much.